Hi guys. I've been thinking about the scenics on this build and what might be the best approach. All this is due to the layout being pretty big and actually, aside from the odd bit here and there, most of the scenics left to do are going to be all the same. This has a few drawbacks. Not only is it quite testing for me to work through due to the battle against repetition and my dwindling attention span, but also for you as viewers to watch. I can't just show 4 weeks worth of videos with me sitting adding polyfiber over and over again. It would be boring. I then decided the most effective way to do this is to split the layout up into 4 areas. Since there are 2 scenic boards, and the hillside is split up on each by the railway running through the middle. And this might help push it along, as by containing the working area into smaller chunks, I should find motivation in seeing actual progress, which, diluted over the entire layout, might not look like much. Anyway, best get on with it. This week I'm going to be working on the base scenery, so again, no trees. And this starts with mossy clumps that cover Nantgwernel's bank. This is essentially the same process as the moss on the rocky outcrops by the line, but over a much larger area. I'm not wasting masses of time on this, as you'll hardly see it below the next layers. So after PVA was dabbed on, and fine flocks added, the moss is airbrushed to bring the colours in line with the rest of the layout. Scenery layer number 2 comes in the form of yet more polyfiber. I'm really teasing this stuff out as fine as I can. It's also pretty good at staying put once it's been sprayed with hairspray. In fact, hairspray is my current go-to for applying scenery. Gone are the days where I would try and aim spray glue at fine areas of scenery, only to hit the surrounding area like Spider-Man's hand webs. Hairspray is a much finer mist, as well as being more gentle on the scenery and the wallet. It also smells nice, which I like. As with most of the scenery for the layout, this layer of polyfiber can now get sprinkled with green leaf scatters. And then with orange, and finally brown leaf scatters. I might well add more leaves once the trees are in place, because you'd find more around them, and at the moment, it's anyone's guess how large or dense these trees will eventually be. I really need to find the courage to look into them before that. I find it curious that so many modelers don't use these leaf scatters. I get through pots and pots of them, and they really add a sharpness to the scenery that you just don't seem to get with other types such as flocks or clumps. Oh well, it's more for me. With the main scenics down, the next job is to adjust the colours to blend them in with the rest of the layout. This is fairly subtle as you see the earth brown misting over the hillside, but it gives enough of a tonal change to bring a colder, more autumnal feel to the scene, which is good because it's a cold autumnal scene. And with that done, and a new tripod for my phone since I broke the last one months ago, I can pan over the layout, which shows how large the layout is, and how much work I've actually just done in that video. That's quite good to see. I've also had comments from viewers about these videos and not seeing the entire layout that often. So there you go, you. I didn't plan to get much further with the scene this week, but I quickly forgot about that and carried on regardless of plans that I carefully mapped out. I think to make this scene look like the real thing, I'm going to need to be constantly building it up with various little bushes and trees. So to make a start on this, I'll add a couple now. To bring more of a variety to the plants, I'll use some of my specially brown sprayed polyfiber from a failed plan weeks ago. Of course, it is just polyfiber, so the rest of the process isn't any different. Though these particular bushes in October, and no, I don't know what genus they are, seem to be very green still. So instead of brown and orange leaves, it's green and green leaves. This is the same technique as on Corish, where I use a lighter green as a highlight along the top edges of the bush. It's a classic technique, and I'm glad I came up with it. One more plant that I wanted to make a start on was the absolute masses of ferns. The layout will need literally thousands of ferns by the end, but I have a plan. This starts with a natural moss that I handpicked from the woodland around Lake Vyrnwy, though I'm sure it grows in many other places in the UK at least. This particular patch was actually picked about 10 years ago, and I've only just got round to using it. You'll be pleased to know that even after all that time, the plant is still flexible and doesn't just crumble into pieces. Each individual frond is then cut down and split up even further, and these teeny tiny pieces are what I'll be using as building blocks for my mini ferns. This process means that I can make masses of ferns from just a few minutes of cutting this moss up on the workbench. And as a visual example, for those who are visual learners, all this took about 5 minutes. Not bad. Not bad at all. So now comes to the planting of it. Now, you've seen me plant these into ferns in the past. I glue them around a particular central point to make a full-blown fern. However, as these ferns grow up the steep bank, they appear to only really grow out towards the light, so almost only one half of the fern shows. Which means that now it's a case of planting these little bunches all over the bank. Well, it turns out I only had enough for this little area here, but I guess it's a start. I also discovered that I found this job completely relaxing. I think it's because you could just shut off and you don't need to really think or concentrate on where you're planting each one. The only aim is to plant as many as you can. And that came as a surprise and a blessing. Most of the time I work on models is to push to get each weekly video done, which does mean that I lose a bit of the enjoyment as a payoff. So to find a job to make me slow down and chill out a bit was really good for me. When I eventually ran out of the ferns, the only job left was to adjust their colours as well. I really like the natural colour of this moss, but the ferns at the moment are still alive at Mount Gwernal, so I needed to bring a bit of colour back to them. Though I'm trying to hit the green towards the centre of the fronds with the airbrush, leaving the tips going brown. I think they look alright. As I mentioned, I've still got lots of scenery to add over them, but it's really nice to have found a fairly convincing way to model ferns. It's tough to find an area of Wales that hasn't got ferns growing, especially round a railway. And despite this, so many layouts don't include them. Though I put that down to the fact that there's not really an easy way to do it. I bought a few packs of paper laser cut ferns to try, and it would have ended up costing hundreds of pounds to cover the layout in them. Maybe one day a commercial product will come along and fill that gap in the market, but for now, natural products are the best option. In fact, as you've seen on my builds, natural products can work for a lot of modelling materials. You just need to experiment. So there we go, 1/4 of the layout scenic base down. It feels like this layout has been under construction for ages, but if you exclude the rolling stock build videos, it hasn't actually been that long at all. And the end is in sight. I just need to go and pick a bit more moss. Best get my wellies on. Cheers.